You ever notice how some studios treat marketing like it's taboo? Like it's almost admirable, in a train wreck sort of way. The idea that a masterpiece will just naturally find its audience, no need to tweet, no need to show up to events, just drop the content and disappear into the fog. Very poetic, very 2013. And look, I get it, the constant hype cycles are exhausting, especially in gacha, where every patch is a 3-week trailer marathon with Shakespearean teaser tweets. There is value in restraint, but silence? Silence is dangerous. In this space, if people aren't talking about you, they are forgetting you. Kuro Games learned that the hard way. Punishing Grey Raven, great action, banger music. And no one knew it existed. That silence haunted Wuthering Waves too. Great content and then silence. And for a while, it felt like history was repeating. But then something shifted. Around version 2.0, the rhythm changed. Updates felt intentional. Teasers hit harder. The fog started to lift. And at the center of that shift, Cartethyia.
What? I'm like speechless. Holy shit!
To understand why Cartethyia's rise hit so hard, you have to look back at the early struggles, the near invisibility, and the moments where it felt like Kuro didn't want people to know how good their game actually was. You don't have to dig that deep to understand why people were skeptical about Wuthering Waves' marketing. Anyone who touched Punishing Grey Raven already knew what was coming. It was a great game, tight combat, incredible music, and not a soul heard about it unless they were already in deep. Kuro has always had this weird habit of making impressive games and then whispering about it like it's a state secret. It is kind of baffling. So when Wuthering Waves launched, there was this lingering anxiety. It is not about the quality, but about the visibility. The fear that history would repeat itself, that Kuro would just drop content and vanish into the mist until the patch notes needed posting. And to be fair, that concern wasn't unfounded. For example, there was a noticeable silence right after Yinlin's banner. I don't think there's extra content or anything. And for days and weeks, the official channels just stopped existing. And that kind of vacuum, in this genre, it doesn't just look bad, it gets people forgetting about your game. When you compare that to how other gacha companies handles things, constant engagement, weekly content previews, calculated leaks disguised as drip marketing, character birthdays, Kuro Games' early approach felt prehistoric. WoWo was really quiet. If it wasn't for the content creators, I don't think the game would have had that much reach. But then something changed. I don't know if 𝗖cy replaced the marketing guy or what, but the shift was obvious. Starting with the 2.x era, the 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁 arc, it felt like WoWo finally got serious. It is not just about the game, but how about they talked about the game? The gameplay took a huge step forward, exploration felt more alive, the writing is way more confident, they started building this interconnected world that actually felt more like it had depth, stories that didn't just exist to introduce banner units, but gave them weight, presence, and maybe the most important shift of all, the marketing machine finally turned on. And not just in a "we posted a trailer" kind of way, there was pacing, rhythm, momentum. You can feel the buildup. Everything started funneling into one name, Cartethyia, easily the most hyped up character Wuthering Waves has ever had. And you could tell Kuro wanted it to be that way. But this time, it didn't just hope people would care. They made people care, slowly, steadily, with every update, every animation, every cinematic moment. The hype wasn't manufactured, it was earned. Cartethyia didn't start with a leak or a big title screen, no drip marketing push or anything. She showed up in Ragusa, dancing across the water in silence, and left half the player base staring at their screen like they just seen a ghost. It was barely a scene. There's no big dramatic shot. It is just poise, precision, and that little sense of mystery. And that is all it took. Within hours, she was the question mark. Nobody knew anything about her. She was elegance with tension behind her eyes, and people were locked in. And from there, the speculation spiraled hard. Some thought she was a puppet, some thought she was a walking apocalypse. You know, the way she moved, the way she was framed, none of it says support character. None of it said NPC. There was too much pull in her design, too much silence. Anime characters don't get this mysterious unless they got something to hide. And then came the 2.1 trailer. You know, nobody expected this this trailer. I saw many content creators that ended their recording or ended their stream to the echoes dancing at the end of the official live stream, but then they showed the trailer for the whole 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗵𝗁 arc. Everyone was shocked, excited for the new characters, but there was one that stole the show. Come to me, mighty god killer. That was the moment the fandom caught it. Cartethyia wasn't just interesting, she was central, a myth planted in plain sight. A lot of people are actually very intrigued to know more about that big version of Cartethyia, and they are answered when the update 2.2 comes out, where the story is revolving around Cartethyia.
Oh, child!
Yo!
Wow.
Holy shit!
This is insane.
But the pacing actually pays off in a big way.
Hail Kuro, chat.
Wow.
2.2 didn't just deliver, it reframed everything. What looked like a standard quest turned out to be a full-on narrative event, cinematics, emotional beats. 𝗼𝗏 pulled back the curtain and told us to sit back and enjoy the show. The 2.2 story quest brought more than just lore, it brought gravity. The kind of story that makes the rest of the cast feel small for a minute. You've got Cantarella getting the literal best background story in the game. The Rover actually getting lines that matter and actually getting that main character aura. But the real weight, Cartethia's duality.
Jeez.
We'll be arriving at the first water rise soon. A few details if you don't mind.
my.
She's not just shy and composed, she is split. The soft-spoken girl you're talking to the entire time is also Fleur de Lis, this terrifying, very hot, almost divine alter ego. The contrast hits hard. It is not edgy for the sake of it, it is tragic. It makes you care about her in a way that transcends aesthetics. And that is when the fandom exploded. And it's not just hype. People were making songs, fan art, essays. She stopped being a mystery and became the movement. It was about witnessing a character become legendary in real time. It would have been easy for Kuro Games to leave Cartethyia as pure lore bait. That is a pretty common trap in gacha storytelling. You build up a character as this god tier force in the narrative and then hand them off as a tutorial boss with bad scaling and zero metas, but that is not what happened here. After you play the story, you can play her as the weekly boss, and yeah, she is flashy, beautifully animated, and kind of folds when you're running a remotely optimized team, but that wasn't the point. That version was more of a narrative echo, a shadow of her power, not the real thing. But then 2.3 shows up, and suddenly you're face to face with her. The actual her, the lore accurate her, hologram Cartethyia. It's like an Asian parent when they found out that you got a B- in your math exam. Absolute cinema fighting animations, mechanics that actually require big focus to go around it, and no more training wheels. Not like there's any training wheels in holograms anyway. She's not just a set piece anymore, she's the benchmark, and that is what sealed it. She wasn't just a good story character with pretty effects, she became a mechanical expression of her own myth. Her fight feels like what the lore was saying: dominance, precision, control. It is rare for a gacha game to close that loop, and it's even rarer for it to land this cleanly. Now this next part is genuinely bizarre. At the start of 2.3, there is no leaks, none. And for a live service game, that silence was almost suspicious. But just as people were starting to wonder what was going on, Jeff Keighley, of all people, drops a Cartethyia animation clip. And it wasn't just some vague cinematic or out of context image, it was her, in motion, in a new region, clear as day. And it caught everyone off guard, not just 𝗼𝗏 players. The entire corners of gaming Twitter lit up. Even people who would never touch Wuthering Waves were curious. And whether it was actually a mistake or not, it worked. That moment had more reach than any dev stream or banner preview ever could. It made Cartethyia feel important, like she wasn't just another limited 5-star, but a character big enough to headline a major industry event. It was weird, it was unorthodox, but it landed with more impact than most gacha trailers could ever hope for. The leak itself, it shows Cartethyia as a playable character. And here's the twist, she is arguably better than her boss version. Visually, mechanically, thematically, everything. It is like Kuro looked at the usual gacha formula of make the boss cool and then nerf her into mediocrity and said absolutely not. Her animations are insane. The weight, the precision, the impact frames, the way her movements flow between grace and sheer violence. This isn't just a kit, it is choreography. The animations feel earned. They carry that same cinematic weight she had in the story, but now you are the one wielding it. There is no slap here, no recycled frames, no weird weird stiffness, no jank in her transitions. The boss was great, but playable Cartethyia? She is the refined version, the myth distilled. A bit after that comes Dawn Arrives. And this wasn't just a trailer, it was a statement. One of those moments where a live service game stops feeling like a product and starts feeling like art. It is a deep dive into Cartethyia's psyche, her fears, her fractured identity, the burden of being both a symbol and a person. And the game doesn't just try to explain everything to you, it shows it. Through visuals, through the mood, through that hauntingly restrained soundtrack. Every line lands with weight, every frame feels like it was directed, not just rendered. The pacing, the tension, the raw vulnerability, it all hits. And you know it worked, because it didn't just resonate with the usual WoWA diehards, it broke containment. Millions of views, #1 on Bilibili. People were watching it in actual movie theaters. They rented this whole place just to watch that trailer. It was the moment Cartethyia stopped being hype and became canon. A cultural flag for Wuthering Waves. And you can always tell when a character goes from popular to cultural event, because the rollout stops feeling like marketing and starts feeling like momentum. And that was Cartethyia. She is the only resonator in the game with not just one, but two, maybe even three original theme tracks. And these weren't throwaway background loops either. They were fully produced, emotionally layered pieces that actually told the story. Like, it was hard to overstate how rare it is in a live service game where most characters are lucky to get a remix and a wallpaper. And then you had her voice actor doing a full playthrough of her own quest, which on paper sounds like a small thing, but it landed hard. It gave people a connection beyond the usual hype cycle. Suddenly, Cartethyia in Fleur-de-Lis doesn't look like this god, you know? She was kind of endearing, and that contrast made her even more compelling. Her official showcases tallied up, crossed 1 million views in less than just 3 days. And then there was an offline display in Chengdu. They didn't just rent out a screen, they took over the Tianfu Twin Towers, broadcast her across the skyline like she was a real world myth. That is promotion of an insane scale. You don't do that unless you know you have made a character people will remember years from now. Even on Twitter, some Wuthering Waves hashtags now comes with Cartethyia emoji. It all landed with a surgical timing. They didn't let the drip die. And that is the thing. It didn't feel like a drip. It felt like a flood. A full spectrum saturation of her presence. You couldn't log on without seeing her somewhere. And instead of burning out, people just leaned in harder. Because by that point, it wasn't just a banner anymore. It was a moment. A confluence of storytelling, marketing, gameplay, and culture. And Cartethyia was dead center. So here is the wild part. A year ago, the most consistent criticism of Wuthering Waves was that Kuro didn't know how to market their own game. Amazing visuals, top tier OSTs, tight combat, but the messaging basically MIA. And now, they have just pulled off what might be one of the cleanest turnarounds in gacha history. From ghosting their own player base to orchestrating a global pop-off moment. No leaks, no beta tests, just purely controlled escalation. And Cartethyia's rollout was the proof of concept, not just for Kuro Games' growth, but for Wuthering Waves' future. Because in a way, Cartethyia is Kuro's arc. Underestimated, misunderstood, slowly built up through quiet teases and small wins, and then delivered on, fully unapologetically, with everything they had. She is legacy coded now. The turning point that showed people WoWA wasn't a fluke, that this game had something to say. This is Wuthering Waves' golden age. This is Cartethyia's legacy, and this is only the beginning. But that is all from me, Glaivekiyo, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.